Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
Hi, Rob Browne here with you on this Monday morning edition of Sidelines. Got a great lineup today. Lots of folks on here with us. Coach Matt Dean, Rhodes College over in Memphis. And, they're going to be hosting the Ed Murphy Classic, Track and Field Classic. This is a massive event coming up August 4th and 5th. Check it out, Ed Murphy Classic. Follow it on Twitter. We'll keep you updated with more information as we go along. Vince Ferrara, the sports animal up in Knoxville, checks in with us. Got to visit with him a lot up at Media Days in Nashville last week. He'll be telling us what's going on with the Tennessee VOLS. Had a lot of time to talk with different players up there, Joe Milton being one of them from the Muck down in Pahokee, Florida. This is a big kid. He's like 6'7", has a cannon for an arm. I talked about what has he done to make his game better. He said, everything. I love that attitude. I've done everything that I can to make my game better, okay? So hour number 2, Franz Beard, GatorBaitMedia.com, checks in with us as well. He has a lot to say, his daily thoughts, his one final pithy thought. Never at a shortage of good information. I call it show prep for every show, the information that he puts out. And in the 4th segment, Chris Lee checks in with us. Rivals, the Southeastern 14 up in Nashville. He covers Vandy, the SEC, college sports, the Titans, the Predators, you name it. He is on point up in Nashville. So, hey, we're here 6 days a week, 25 times a month, at least 50 hours or more of content every month. We're talking college football, basketball, baseball, recruiting. That's what we do. That's who we are. Follow us on Twitter at @sidelines_live. We love it. And subscribe to our YouTube channel. Every dollar goes a long way as Sidelines continues to grow. I'm going to bring in Matt Dean, who spent last week, I think, on vacation down in L.A., if I'm not mistaken, in lower Alabama, in Gulf Shores or Orange Beach. Welcome back. And we were up there roughing it out, SEC Media Days at the Grand Hyatt downtown Nashville. Learned a lot, and I love talking to the people who've been to the Media Days, Matt, from the very beginning. They said, look, years ago, they used to just gather the media around a round table, and you would just break off in sessions and talk to the coaches. Hell, there were probably people in there smoking and drinking and stuff. That's where you're going to have your best conversations. But, Matt, we learned a lot. You got to watch some of the coverage on TV in between time on the beach. What'd you think?
Good to be back, Rob. I was in L.A., down at Gulf Shores, Orange Beach area. Love that area. Had a chance to watch some of the media day. I got to be honest with you, I had some beach time as well. But here's my take. As a former coach myself, media days are really for the fans and the media. The coaches sometimes, especially football coaches this close to starting practice and camp, they're going to be close to the vest. I had a couple observations from the week. Last year I thought Jimbo came in hot with him and the Saban deal with some of the comments in the offseason. I thought this year was a little more low key. Though it's interesting for a team that went 5-7 in the West last year, 2-6 in conference play. I saw they were picked as high as 3rd in the West. I'm not sure I would have done that by the media, but I said this last time we talked, Rob. My old buddy Ric Flair from the wrestling world. It's George's world right now. To be the man, you got to beat the man. Until someone proves to me, and I don't think it's going to be in the East this year, but I'm still picking Georgia. There's too many back-to-back classes of top 3 talent in those, locker rooms. And I know Joe Milton can throw a football over 80 yards sometimes, but defense still matters, and Kirby Smart is the defensive king. So I will say this. I think it's going to be interesting in the West between LSU and Alabama. I think last year, Brian Kelly's first year in the league, what a great win for him to beat Alabama the way they did with the play call, the 2-point conversion in overtime at home, right? But they get out of the docket really quick with a really good Florida State team. One of the more intriguing teams in the country, I think. They went, I believe, 10-3 last year, won a bowl game. And I think Mike Norvell, who you and I both know from the Memphis days, pretty big year for him, I would say, down in Tallahassee. So that game obviously doesn't have SEC implications, but it has national implications for sure. The winner of that game puts himself in a position, if they do what they're supposed to do in the regular season, to make a run at the college football playoff. That's kind of what I see it. Another thing is I'm always a big fan of Sam Pittman because when he gets up there, he just tells it like it is. They experienced a little tragedy with their recruiting class, the young man that they lost from MUS, who was just, I have a really good friend on that staff, just a really devastating situation. But I think one of my sleeper teams, I love KJ Jefferson. He stays upright. Watch out for Arkansas in the West. You heard it here first.
No, I wouldn't. I'm not going to disagree with you at all about that. If KJ stays healthy and doesn't run the ball so much and is there in every game with Rocket Sanders and with the other talent, which is improving at Arkansas, they can have a big year. Last year, they lost the close games. They won the year before. I was over at my parents' yesterday afternoon, and they had Dad had on in his office the SEC network. Of course, they were replaying the Liberty Bowl, Arkansas and Kansas triple overtime. And it was 38-13 at one point. And Arkansas had 9 players that were starters or significant contributors who were not dressed out for that game.
Right.
You can call it opting out, or I'd just call it they quit on the team. But they still got the win. Sam Pittman went out of his way to remind people that despite all that, they got the win. And I'm glad he did that because either you're all in or you're half in, and you can't win with players that are half in. And, what I noticed at media days, and I was very impressed with Kingsley Igakwan, offensive lineman for Florida. I asked him point blank about NIL and what he thought about it. And he said, look, I get it. People want to make money. And he goes, but I look at guys around the country and, not saying guys on my team are bad, but I got a question. What are you here for? Are you just here for the money? Are you all in? Are you a teammate? Are you committed to whatever university you're at? He said, I've been at UF for 4 years. I'll get my degree from here. Because I said, think about the relationships that you're going to build. And when you come back one day, people will never forget the ones who finished. They won't remember the ones who quit, but you also won't have any credibility. And he absolutely agreed. And Allie P. Quilber and Buddy Martin, Gatorbait Media, loved that. And but I saw that with student athletes from a lot of different schools. I think people need to calm down and get their wits about them and quit panicking. College football is not circling the drain, folks. It's adjusting. It's slowing down to get better.
Rob, I got a quick question for you. What's your take year 2 at Florida with Billy Napier? What are the expectations down there? What's your over-under win total? What are you seeing? I know we got Franz coming on later, but you probably had this question with Buddy Martin, but what are you thinking in year 2? What kind of jump will the Gators take?
The jump depends on if they can find a quarterback. Mertz, Miller, whatever. They've got to improve there. Last year you had a great athlete, but in reality, the total number of starts Anthony Richardson had in college was maybe 13, but it's based on what he can be. With Florida, there's talent, but there's not tons of it. Dan Mullen, did not lose his job because he was doing a great job, which means Florida's not stocked with talent 2 and 3 deep at every position. So they're going to be a lot like Auburn. I think Auburn's in better position at quarterback. Yeah. But also listen to what Shane Matthews said about the Gator quarterbacks. He said, people don't know a lot about him, but when Shane Matthews talks about quarterbacks, this is a guy that played in the NFL 14 years. He knows what he's talking about. But I think the problem with Florida is they're in the East. Tennessee's coming back with Joe Milton. Georgia, Carson Beck, Brock Vandegrift, whoever the quarterback is, it doesn't matter. They've got so much other talent. So that's why. So they're going to be picked to win 6 games or 7 games. Florida, I think Billy Napier long term, he won 41 games at University of Louisiana. And I asked him this question: what that you learned working for Dabo, working for Nick Saban at Alabama, do you still use, and what is already obsolete in coaching at Florida? And he answered that. And he said, there's a lot you take, but you better be changing and adapting. Yeah. That's what he's got to do. He's got to get a quarterback. And he's got to, recruiting-wise, Florida's the top 5 program right now. And the Florida fans are just going to have to accept the fact this is not an overnight fix.
Rob, you made an interesting comparison with your Tigers and the Gators. And I think it's going to come down to that preseason camp for both programs. And I would love to be a fly on the wall in the quarterback room at Auburn because you guys are high, rightfully so, on your grad transfer. Robbie Ashford's got all the talent in the world, has had some really good games. Will he stay healthy for the whole season? How will that play out, Rob, in your mind at the quarterback spot? Because I will tell you, if you look at Coach Freeze, traditionally, when he has that signal caller he's comfortable with, his offenses move the football. There's no doubt about that, So go back to your original question, I am really intrigued this year. I think we're going to see people are going to sit there and say, wow, Auburn's back on track because we have someone who understands the entire SEC culture from the recruiting standpoint to schematics to building a staff, the loyalty of keeping some players, some coaches there that you needed to do so. I think with Florida, it's a little bit different because we all know Billy can coach, but he was coming from Louisiana to big-time Power 5 football, even though he's been with some great people, as you mentioned. And then, I just got to tell you, Rob, Brian Kelly did a really good job in year 1. So that whole LSU Alabama dynamic in the West just really intrigues me because I think LSU is really, really good.
Yeah, I think they are. What I noticed so many people fall for it every year. They did forever with Florida. And when Charlie Pell got there in 1979, he had them rolling. And then they got in trouble in 84. They struggled the rest of the 80s. And then Steve Spurrier came in there in 90. And Florida became what so many people always thought they could be and more. Well, that's Texas A&M. But you're talking about a program that's won 11 games in 2012, 11-2. That's the only double-digit win season for A&M in this millennium. That's what people
about. In fairness, Rob, the COVID year, they were 9-1 after they won. They finished in the AP 4. They really – a lot of people thought that they were, and me included, because that time my son was working there. But a lot of people
I know they were good.
They were better than Notre Dame, even though Notre Dame got the final college football playoff bid. A&M went to the Orange Bowl. We were there. They beat North Carolina 38-24. Terrific football game. It was tied 24-24 fourth quarter. Don't forget Connor Wegman, their starting quarterback. That's why a lot of people think that A&M's going to make the jump in the West because of how good that young man is. I know he kind of got, his taste last year in a banged-up year with their offense. But, if Petrino works his magic with Connor Wegman, kid's got a glorious arm. I'm just telling you, he can throw the football, Rob.
Yeah. No, I agree with you. And I think I know you're right about that 20 season. They went 9-1, and they were really good and just missed the playoff. But people look back, they look at A&M. Connor Wegman, 5-star quarterback, played last year. They had Haynes King out there at the beginning and that was just not the right fit. But I think Texas A&M, a lot of people look at that program all across the country. They look at the money and the resources that they have, the recruiting base in the state of Texas. So they think, wow, this is a program that can win it all. The one that I think is underrated, definitely think that Arkansas is. The other one, Mississippi State. I was impressed with Zach Arnett. When he got up there, got to remember, folks, he's from Albuquerque. He's got a connection to Joe Lee Dunn, who coached at New Mexico, the 3-3-5 defense. But he worked 3 years in the air raid offense, being the defensive coordinator for Mike Leach.
Correct.
And when you know how to coach defense and you do a pretty good job dealing with the air raid, you know what you're doing. And he also has a lot of love for Mississippi State. He wants to be there, and he loves the fans. He loves everything about the place. I like a coach that's that comfortable, and he'll recruit. They won 9 games last year, and they're flying below the radar again, and they've got one of the best quarterbacks in college football in Will Rogers. So when you've got a defensive guy who's your head coach, now obviously he's got a coordinator, and they'll be doing things different. They'll probably run the ball more. I think they'll have a better defense, and they'll win some of the close games that they lost last year.
Rob, you are spot on your analysis there. I believe you can make an argument that not only is Will Rogers a very good quarterback, he may be the best quarterback in the West when it plays out. I mean, if you look at NFL upside, Will Rogers may be a guy in a couple of years that's either a backup holding the clipboard, making a really nice check, or a potential NFL starter. That's how good that young man is.
Yeah.
I know him and Coach Leach had a tremendous relationship. And I think you're right. I think you bring in a defensive-minded person and Coach Arnett. The defense will continue to get better, and you have your starting quarterback who's been there, 3 years with successful teams with Coach Leach. I'm just telling you this. You may be right, Rob. If that defense takes another step, Mississippi State can get in the conversation. They can. Yeah. They're really talented.
Because you look at the way they ran the ball. I mean, 44, 55, 66 yards a game average. I mean, that's one play, really. And you look at schools like Ole Miss and Alabama, they'll run the ball. And Arkansas with Rocket Sanders, they'll run the ball. And every one of these quarterbacks has a different story. Will Rogers is a kid that grew up in Rankin, Mississippi. His dad's a coach. Jake Wimberly, who's on the show with us every week down in Jackson, ESPN 105.9, The Afternoon Drive, knows him really well, knows that family, knows that kid. I saw him at media days. He's a big kid. Man, he was making the rounds. A lot of people interested in him. And then you say, who's the best dual threat quarterback in the league? Jaden Daniels at LSU.
Yeah.
KJ Jefferson at Arkansas. All these guys can run. And you hear that term, when you hear the term dual threat, is that there's two ways to look at it. And you tell me if I'm right or wrong, or if you agree or disagree, whatever. Dual threat means he can throw the ball and he can run the ball, or he can throw the ball, but a lot of times before the play even is developed, he takes off and runs because he panics.
Well, Rob, in fairness, if you don't have the legs, you're not going to have option 2 regardless.
That's right.
So
that's correct. You're correct, sir.
Anyone that's labeled a dual threat quarterback, first of all, is a tremendous athlete, right?
Yeah.
I think what's interesting about how the games evolved, I'll take it even to the professional level. You look at the success Jalen Hurts has had with the Philadelphia Eagles. As a Chicago Bear fan myself, we're hoping that Justin Fields has that same type of jump this year with better outside talent around him. You look at what Josh Allen has done, relatively speaking, for the Buffalo Bills, and you see more of those types of players than we've ever seen before, Rob, at the college level, obviously, and now it's transforming to the pros. And I look at, what was interesting about Mississippi State when Coach Leach was coaching them, you get a lot of 3rd and 2s, 3rd and 3s, and the big physical teams from our era, Rob, they wanted to pound that football. Okay. I mean, I saw when Coach Leach was running that air raid, man, they were just throwing those underneath routes. And a lot of times they're crossing situations. 3rd and 2 for them, that's like a nice toss sweep. Heck, they're going to get the first down. And I think you go back to one of the things at Alabama's core that always makes Alabama Alabama is the trenches. And you know what? I coached basketball my whole career, but I'm fascinated with football because in basketball, Rob, you know this, home court matters. Those fans are right on the court. They're in your ear. You're trying to make that shot. They are literally right there. They're 20 feet away or less sometimes, correct? In football, you got these beautiful historic stadiums, but it's not like they're totally on top of you. I mean, you still win the game in football, Rob, on the line of scrimmage. And that's where we don't talk about it enough because at media days, we talk to the quarterback. We talk to the edge rusher. We talk to the star wide receiver, whatever. But it's those old linemen, Rob. And when they protect and give that dual threat an opportunity to get a good read in, and if that defense doesn't have a spy, that's when that dual threat really takes advantage of it. It's a combination of a good offensive line and a defense that does not assign a person to the quarterback. Like it's almost one I used to run a lot of triangle and 2 and box and 1 gimmick defenses in basketball. If I'm facing, KJ Jefferson, Jaden McDaniels, or even Robbie Ashford, I got a linebacker that's assigned to the quarterback. Now, what that does, if you're a good quarterback throwing the football, it takes someone away from coverage sometimes, right? So you should have an advantage with your throwing the football if the right play is called.
Yeah, and you're talking about the Jaden Daniels came in from Arizona State last year and did a really good job. He got better as the season went along. And
he did.
You look at a guy like Robbie Ashford at Auburn. I mean, he was a sub 50% passer. Remember, He played at Hoover, powerhouse program there in the Birmingham Metro, and goes to Oregon for 2 years and plays baseball. Does not play football. Comes in and has to deal with Brian Harsin. The kid can flat out run. He may be the fastest quarterback ever at Auburn, but he's got a lot of work to do on his throwing motion. But I know he's working out. They'll post videos of him working out in Birmingham in the flyover there right by Top Flight Golf or Top Shelf Golf. He's a superb athlete. And if he gets the job, great. If not, Auburn's got to find a place for him to be on the field as a receiver, as a defensive back, like Nick Marshall. He played quarterback.
He did,
in high school, set the all-time Georgia record for touchdown passes out of Pineville, Georgia. And then he goes to Georgia. He's a defensive back. Comes to Auburn and is a quarterback. The one thing Gus always did well with was other people's quarterbacks, junior college quarterbacks. But the longer you were with Gus, the more you seem to go backwards. I look at KJ Jefferson, Connor Wigman, Will Rogers. Now we're going to flip over here to Alabama as we stay in the West. Buckner. I mean, he was not, most people will say, he wasn't going to beat out Sam Hartman, the transfer from Wake Forest, who came to Notre Dame. Yeah. So Rodney Orr, Tyler Insider, talks with us about the speed of Jalen Milroe. We know in the A&M game last year, he had to fill in when Bryce Young was banged up. Milroe, he said, is 6'2 and a half, about 228 pounds, legitimate 4'4", 340. He's that fast, that big. Ty Simpson. You know what? Ty Simpson's a really, really good. He's the son of the coach at UT Martin. He's been there 17 years. When you are the son of a coach, or you're the son of an engineer, or the son of an architect, you know about those professions because you got to participate in them. What do you think is going to end up happening at Alabama? Tommy Rees, offensive coordinator from Notre Dame, came down to Tuscaloosa, and then he brought Buckner. You think that's enough to get him the starting job this year, or will they start out and probably play several guys the first few games? Well, they got Texas in game 2. They better have it figured out by then.
So Rob, when I interpreted some of Coach Saban's comments, it looks like that's going to go down to the wire, don't you think, in camp with that quarterback battle you're describing? So I think you would think that the connection to Notre Dame would help Buckner with Reese. You would think, but Saban's going to be in that room too, Rob. It's going to be whatever coach thinks is best. And I'm going to tell you, I think when we look at quarterback decisions, if you don't have that returning vet, or it's going to come down to turnovers, right? Who's going to make the better decisions? Because I got to tell you, and fans don't want to hear this, sometimes a 45-yard punt makes all the difference in the world. Flip the field position script. Let your defense get back on the field. Let's get the ball back in better field position. So I think it's going to come down to, Rob, strictly on who has the better camp. I think there's probably neck and neck going on in that situation. And that makes it harder for us to predict the ceiling for Alabama, because we know of all the quarterbacks in this league, we have a pretty good track record of who's had some success.
Yeah.
So that's why I still think the trenches matter. I think Alabama is gonna hope they run the ball so well that play pass really gives their quarterback a chance to be successful.
Well, they got J.C. Latham on the offensive line. I got a chance to talk to him, and I said, J.C., one thing about Alabama, it's not hard to get motivated because everybody that you all play is going to give you everything they've got. You're probably the biggest game of the year on their schedule, maybe the biggest game in school history. He loved that. He said, absolutely, man, you embrace that. That's what you sign up for, okay? Yeah. You're an American. You expect to be the best. We're the greatest country in the history of the world. I believe in American exceptionalism. Alabama, they're worrying about the quarterback. Roman Harper said the same thing. I got to talk to him a lot down at Media Days. He's so good. And Nick, I trust. Yeah. That's what they say. They figure it out somehow. Now, here's one that's interesting. I'm a big Lane Kiffin fan. I am sick and damn tired. I'm so sick of these snarky smart asses out there that criticize him because he looked like, he was worn out when he was at Media Days. My God, the guy has kids. He's got a life. He's a football coach at a major, big-time Power 5 program. Oh, my God, maybe he stayed out or maybe he came in from the beach. God forbid he goes on vacation, Matt. I mean, oh, my God, I don't know what we're going to do. I love his candor. I think he is absolutely one of the elite quarterback coaches. He is the son of a coach, one of the smartest defensive coaches ever, Monty Kiffin. And, last year, and I hope this year it doesn't work out, but last year their schedule was back-end loaded. But he talked about that quarterback room. Jackson Dart, Spencer Sanders, Walker Howard. I mean, Luke Altmaier already got out of there. He's gone. He's gone to Illinois, I think. But he'll figure it out. That's a guy no one's really talking about. And don't forget, we've already been talking about A&M. You've got Bobby Petrino, who's a pretty damn guy. I think he's a pretty damn good coach. He's elite. He is auditioning for a Power 5 job there with Jimbo. And Jimbo was asked about heated conversations and all. He goes, hey, have you ever seen a coaching staff where there are not some heated discussions? I mean, come on. I agree with him on that. But let's talk about that quarterback room at Ole Miss. I saw a lot of comments. What does it say when hardly any of the questions with Kiffin were about his team? Well, a couple of things. Number one, I asked him a lot about guys sticking it out and not going into the portal, but I think the lack of questions that's on the reporters if they're not asking those questions. Lane Kiffin will answer any question that you ask him, but he's also funny. He's good for quotes, and he said NIL is not working the way it was designed to. Is he the Steve Spurrier of this time? But let's break it down, because what I love about you is you are the coach. You will always be the coach. Women's basketball, football, bowling, it doesn't matter. Someone who's been a coach is like someone who, has been a cop. They can talk about what it's really like.
I have family friends that have worked for Lane, and you're right. Lane's really good. He's really talented. Yeah. And I'm going to tell you what, one of the best, the best acquisitions. I say acquisition. It's really not fair. It's not a professional league we're talking about. But Their quarterback room is very intriguing. Spencer Sanders from Oklahoma State, Rob, that young man can play. I watched him play in a bowl game against A&M a few years ago. I will tell you this. Don't be surprised if Ole Miss doesn't go 9-10 wins again. I mean, don't be surprised at all because the reality is, in the SEC West, you got some. How do I phrase it? There's everyone's skin is a little tougher, like leather. Going on the road doesn't bother some of those people because they do it every year in the toughest environments. And I will tell you this. You don't think Alabama can't wait to host Tennessee this year? You don't think Alabama can't wait to host LSU after those two close losses that if they get any one break in the last 2 minutes, they go 12-0 last year in the regular season? Think about that, Rob. Yeah. I mean, come on. Bryce Young, number 1 pick overall, he's going to be a starter for Carolina. I like Ole Miss a lot. If I was getting a vote in the West, I would honestly pick them third. That's how much I think of that quarterback room. I would. So, but when you put Ole Miss, Mississippi State, Arkansas, A&M in like a popcorn bag and you shake them up, they can come out a lot of different ways, brother. They're not that far apart.
We're going to take a quick commercial break and let's do that. But I'm with you. I think a lot of the Kiffin deal is, look, the flirtation on both sides with him and Auburn and other schools, whatever, that killed Ole Miss's season at the end of the year. It killed Liberty. They lost 3 of their last 4.
Right.
If they can go on the road and win in Fayetteville, they shouldn't have lost another game. And that's always a distraction. But if you want to discount Lane Kiffin because he looked like he was, his hair wasn't perfectly brushed or something. I mean, give me a break. The guy can flat out coach. He's one of the best quarterback coaches in America. And I use as evidence 2014, 15, and 16. He gets Alabama in the playoffs. The players obviously are good, but 3 quarterbacks. The first one, Blake Sims, who had been a running back, a quarterback, a wide receiver, a running back. I think he was an analyst at one time, came back at quarterback, then Jacob Coker, and then Jalen Hurts. Matt Dean is with us, Vince Ferrara after the break. Sidelines on a Monday. We'll be right back.
Red River Ford and Toyota, located in Wynne, Arkansas. If you're in the market for a new or used car, truck, or SUV, call, go online, or drop by and see them. Located 45 minutes from Memphis, go off the 4-city exit on I-40 and go north about 15 minutes on Highway 1. Easy to work with and still believe in customer service. If you live out of town, they will deliver your vehicle to you. RedRiverFordToyota.com. Just see what they can do.
Strengthen your seed zone this spring with quality tillage equipment from House Industries. Located in Cherry Valley, Arkansas, House Industries specializes in manufacturing superior equipment that will minimize your downtime and keep you working in the field. To ensure the highest quality control, all design, fabrication, and testing takes place in a 99,000 square foot manufacturing facility located right here in the heart of the Delta. Locate your nearest House equipment dealer online at houseindustriesinc.com.
House Industries, breaking ground.
Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
Hi, Rob Browne back with Matt Dean. And I want to say this, track and field coming up. We had Eddie Murphy talking on the show Saturday, the Ed Murphy Classic over at Rhodes College. They are jacked about that venue, and that's going to be the center of the universe for track and field Friday, August 4th, Saturday, August the 5th. If you want to find out about getting tickets and going to the events, edmurphyclassic.com. Ed Murphy, Murphey, edmurphyclassic.com. Gives the time schedule, how to get tickets and everything. I know, Matt, you'll be over there. I'm going to be over there. What a venue for the showcase of track and field. And you're talking about that quarterback room. We both were at Ole Miss. Spencer Sanders, he's been with Mike Gundy for 4 years. And you say, well, why did he leave? Well, why did Sam Hartman leave after breaking every record in Wake Forest, passing quarterback history. He went to Notre Dame. Well, he left Mike Gundy in Oklahoma State to go to an SEC program. Who the hell wouldn't want to do that? I mean, that's why guys transfer. But he is one of 4 guys in that room, and I think he got a nice bit of NIL money to come. If it doesn't work out, I hope he doesn't leave. This is it.
Yeah, and I want to be also. I want to give props to your Tigers too. I mentioned about every other team in the West. I think one of the neatest stories is going to be how Auburn progresses this year, Rob. I am really curious because I believe it's Peyton Thorne that is the transfer.
Naperville, Illinois.
Yes, I'm very familiar with Naperville. Now getting back to Spencer Sanders, maybe in his mind he wants to get some tape against elite competition. No disrespect, but it's not like Big 12 defenses are out there stopping people all the time, right, Rob? So I think you get a chance to go on this stage. I'm going to tell you this much. I watched him a lot, saw him play in person. He's another guy that can do it with his legs if needed. I think he is I know they haven't named the starter, but I think he is a perfect fit for a Lane Kiffin offense. Another comment I want to get back to, you mentioned a little bit about Lane's hair and everything. I thought one of the neatest moments of the weekend when they were talking to Lane, one of the reporters, I can't remember who, was saying, hey, I often get questions, are you Lane Kiffin? I don't know if you saw that segment or not, the one gentleman.
Nick Brooks is his name. I talked to him afterwards. He's a good kid. He's funny.
And Lane kind of got a chuckle out about that. It seemed like, it kind of gave him a tickle. But, Lane does a lot of that stuff by design. Lane's going to be Lane. He don't care. He doesn't. A lot of these guys, they just don't care, Rob. They're going to be who they are. Everybody's got a marketing edge. Lane talked a lot about the NIL world, and a lot of his points are extremely valid. But you just said that his transfer quarterback probably got a pretty good deal himself. I think he handles the portal better than anyone in the country. That's why we're always in the discussion with Ole Miss right now, because Lane's a great assessor of talent. He knows exactly what he needs to run his offense, and he goes out and he gets it, Rob.
Yeah, no question. And I think you're exactly right about that. And you think about Walker Howard, his dad, Jamie Howard, hell of a player out of Lafayette, Louisiana, played at LSU in the mid-'90s for Curly Hallman. And Lane Kiffin is going to attract guys. Basically, they're going to come to him.
Correct.
That's rare. He doesn't have to go chase them down. But I think what's really neat is when you think about a kid like Peyton Thorne, who played at Michigan State, 26 starts. I believe he was voted captain 2 years in a row by his teammates.
Yeah.
Again, that's underrated, what a big deal that is. And I understand Peyton Thorne is bringing a small army of people with him, support people, to Auburn. He wants that job. And from what I'm hearing, he just does a lot of the little things that in the end are ginormous. They're really big. And, I mean, critical. I think he's got a father who's a coach.
Yeah.
And, Matt, I talked with one of the folks from ESPN that I met down there a lot, and she's a Wisconsin graduate. And I said, listen, we're very myopic here. It's SEC Media Days in Nashville, over 1,200 people here. But I think the Big Ten plays damn good football. And we see these bowl matchups, and usually they don't work out too well. The SEC teams for a long time have had a, pout face, spreading the dreary wearies all over the place if they're not going now to the playoffs, or it's not what they consider a Super Six bowl game. And the Big Ten teams will come in like it's the Super Bowl and curb stomp these SEC schools. Now, let's do this. Let's have a regular season challenge. Let's have Penn State play at the Swamp in the 11 a.m. steam bath game in the Swamp. I'd love to see that. Let's have LSU go to Michigan in early November. You could get an 80-degree up there. You could get a 20-degree day. It doesn't matter. Let's have Iowa play between the hedges against Georgia. That's a much better gauge, okay? And by the way, here's a call out there. If you can help me get Kirk Ferentz on this show, I'll buy you 3 steamer packs of crystals. I love the guy because of the longevity. And since I was a kid, they've only had 2 coaches, Hayden Fry, Kirk Ferentz. And some years they can be really good. Some years you're like, wow, who's pitching today? You know, they'll win a game 8-6 or whatever.
Yeah, that's going to be a hard ask, Rob, because Coach has been there a long time. He's really guarded to the vest. From a media relations standpoint, he doesn't get out there too much unless he's mandated by his athletic director. So I'll have to work on some of my connections to connections. But I love what you're talking about in these football challenges. You see it in basketball, obviously, annually, and people want to do it because of the whole SOS factor. You're talking about a tournament of 64. So in basketball, you just need to get in the tournament. In football, everybody is and to me, from a financial standpoint, do it a home and away so you're guaranteed in the 2-year span, everyone gets a home game, right? So if Iowa were to play at Georgia 1 year, maybe next year A&M comes to Iowa City, so you get a home and away, right? So a home and home. So I love the concept. I just don't see it happening, especially later in the year. Later in the year, you are so locked in to your conference games. When you have that non-conference game, it's usually going to be someone that's not going to challenge you as much per se. Now, looking at this year's Big Ten, I know we haven't really talked much about it because we are a sports Southern show, but I do think Ohio State is really going to be – them and Michigan will both be in consideration the whole year. I'm telling you, from what I'm hearing from some of my Midwest contacts, is Penn State's pretty good. They have a lot of people back. So those are the 3 teams in the Big Ten. And unfortunately, they're all on the same side. You got Michigan, Ohio State, and Penn State. But that means they all play each other. It all is going to work out in the wash, as we say. Yeah.
Yeah, look, Vince Ferrara is going to join us here from the Sports Animal over in Knoxville. I know he had a quick meeting pop up this morning. That's live media, TV, radio, whatever. But, you're speaking of Penn State. Penn State came down to Auburn last year. And granted, you had Brian Harsin. I don't look at baked potatoes the way I used to. I'm a sweet potato fan now. But watching Penn State play Auburn last year was like, clubbing baby seals. It was horrible. I mean, they put an ass beating on Auburn like you hadn't seen in a while. It was sad, okay, is what it was. But I'm going to tell you the team that I think may be the best team in the country, and that is Michigan. They've beaten Ohio State 2 years in a row. Ohio State, they're loaded. And they got to bring in, they got to change at quarterback. But they're going to be really good. Vince, look, welcome to Sidelines. I know you've had a busy morning. Let's think about it. In our time, you've probably been up since 4 o'clock, maybe 5. You're 6 to 9 live up in Knoxville. But, man, media days last week, that was a lot of fun. Matt, you should have seen it one morning on Radio Row, the internet, and there were some technical issues out there. Oh, wow. Whoever that was that got it fixed that fast, Vince, I understand he's been nominated for a Nobel Peace Prize. I don't know what his name was, but that engineer is due a raise. How are you, Vince?
I'm good. Yeah, honestly, from my experience in Radio Row, if you only have one small stretch of the internet going down, that's actually really good. It's a good batting average. But anyway, great to be on with you, and awesome to bump into you near the coffee pretty frequently last week.
That was great. Yeah, got Matt Dean on here right now. Matt is a Rhodes College in Memphis, long time, 16 years women's basketball coach, assistant men's basketball coach, has a son on the staff at Oregon with Dan Lanning, native of Davenport, Iowa, the Quad Cities, big Hawkeye, but he's on here with us every week, and he was watching those media days. And I'm telling you, Matt, Vince, I think, worked 15-hour days. I mean, that the sports animal, Jimmy Himes was there, who's on the show with us a lot. Vince, y'all's table was busier and manned and produced more content than a major network. I mean, what's your local programming schedule? And by the way, folks, put the app on your phone. Matt, I do this. I have a lot of these apps. You can look from 50,000 feet above in the sky, but if you want to know what's going on the ground, you've got to have local coverage. Vince, y'all have got 10, 12 hours a day of all VOLS, all college?
Yeah, on a weekday basis, we're on from 6 a.m. to 7 p.m. each day with live local shows. There's big markets that don't have that much local sports talk programming, and we do and have to talk Tennessee football all the time, all year. And yet,
you have to. That's what a tough job.
Yeah, so think about all those hours of talking Tennessee football, and it never gets old for our listeners. That's what they want to hear, and then you sprinkle in everything else that's going on. So we were on Radio Row. 3 of our 4 shows had at least one member from Radio Row, and so it started at 5 a.m. So you're right about my long days. It was 5 a.m. to 10 p.m. pretty much every day. And then, go to bed and start over with a few hours sleep. But we also had all 4 from Tennessee there, all 3 players, and Josh Heupel, all were on live on our afternoon show the way it timed out, one after another. So Tennessee delivered those guys that were all awesome. Joe Milton even revealed, I don't think I've heard him say it anywhere else, that when he lost a job in 2021, first he was injured. That's how he initially lost his job, is he was hurt. Then Hendon Hooker came in, played so well, he never gave up that job back to Milton. That Milton, after he got hurt, he wondered whether he was good enough to play football and considered maybe he needs to go back home. So, I mean, that's pretty deep and revealing. We hadn't heard that from him before. And then he said that was about a week. And then I finally just looked myself in the mirror and said, you're talented, strong arm, accuracy. You have the intangibles. You're a great quarterback. Hang in there. And so the connections that he had with Hendon Hooker already, and that relationship continued to blossom. And then he opened up after being more confident, and then now he's the clear leader of this team, QB1, and now that his 3rd time as a starting quarterback, and that has not gotten lost by him of taking advantage of that opportunity this year. But the key is he's a much different guy now than he was 2 years ago. I think it's going to take transition. It's going to take time for not only people around the country to figure that out and not judge him by what they'd seen from him 2 years ago or at Michigan, but from the Tennessee fan base. I was at a grocery store yesterday in line, and a guy came up to me, so what do you think about the Tennessee team this year? And immediately the conversation went to Joe Milton, and he was pointing out things that he did in 2021. I'm like, he's a different quarterback now. He's matured. He's gotten opportunity to develop and improve his game. He's been impacted by Hendon Hooker as he's impacted Hendon Hooker. So he got used to the offense. I mean, all those kind of things. Just people change, man. People develop, and not so often people want to just permanently label someone where they see them at one point, and then they don't change. So just a lot of tons of really good content. Milton was really good at media days.
He really was. And Auburn baseball coach Butch Thompson's on with us a lot from mid-January to late June. And he said something, I don't know, Matt, you may have been on the show, but talking about guys getting, improving as they go along during the season or their careers. And he said, hey, it's okay. Players do get better. Matt, you've coached. I mean, you know what that's like. And by the way, I did get to question and talk with Joe Milton. And I asked him that question. I said, hey, what's changed the most? What have you improved the most about your game since you first started? And he looked and he goes, everything. He goes, you try every day to improve everything. And I know it's easy for fans to point the finger and say this and that. But again, Vince, you're right there. I was fortunate enough to be at media days and be around him. These guys do get better. Matt?
You know, it's interesting. I watched Joe at Michigan because I'm a Midwest guy, watch a lot of Big Ten football. And I think part of it is you find the right fit and the right head coach and the right offense. And I give Coach Heupel a ton of credit for instilling confidence in this young man. Obviously, I'm not there. I don't know the situation. But I can tell you from coaching college basketball, I've had kids that did not play a minute. Their first 2 years became all-conference players for me. And how does that happen? Some of that is those conversations like Vince alluded to is like, hang in there. Your time is coming. The talent is there. You just need to hang in there and learn a little bit more, and maybe you're going to catch a break, and we're going to go with you. So I give Coach Heupel a lot of credit. I give Joe Milton a lot of credit. What a great story. And, it all came to fruition in the Orange Bowl for me. When I watched that game, I'm like, man, he just kicked their butt. I think it was like 38-13. I could be wrong, Vince. I don't have that good of memory, but I just thought Milton was terrific that night. And I just think it's a perfect offensive fit for him. The way he throws the long ball too. And Heupel, who was a great player, a great college quarterback himself, is perfect for maturing college quarterbacks. And I can't remember, Vince, my kids grew up in Memphis, but they kind of bleed orange. I can't remember the preseason expectations. I think you all knew you were going to be good last year, but after what you did after Hooker's injury to finish the season strong and plus beating Bama, man, it's got to be just off the charts exciting in Knoxville right now.
It has been, Matt, a while since we've seen preseason expectations for Tennessee like this. I don't think that people are talking college football playoff type of expectation, but there's still the expectation that they can get to a New Year's Six bowl.
Yeah.
And not everybody feels that way. I think some fans still kind of think that they could take a small step back, but to back up an 11-win season and still have high expectations for a second year in a row. Last year was funny. We were looking at it, the 2022 preseason picks. Tennessee was picked third in the East behind Kentucky.
Right.
And they had 8 representatives on the all-SEC team. This year, they're picked clearly second. They have the 4th most votes to win the SEC or with in-division votes or total points. And they only have 4 representatives on the all-SEC team and none first team. So it's interesting. There's the trust in Josh Heupel, the system, I think, to where maybe they don't recognize all the names, but they know they've developed players. And you guys know how it works. They have a list of players at each position that they pick, and you just have to pick among them. You can write one in, but guess what? Your write-in vote, just like ballots in November, they're not going to lead to a candidate being chosen. So I think it is interesting how this team is viewed, but the numbers are always there on offense from Josh Heupel, and I expect Joe Milton to deliver numbers this year, even though he's going to be different than Hendon Hooker. And I don't know about, Heisman Trophy candidate for Milton, but he hadn't thrown an interception in his Tennessee career so far.
Right.
And he's the only FBS quarterback out of, I want to say, 114 last year that had 10 or more touchdown passes. He's the only one that didn't throw an interception. So he protects the football. And for a gunslinger, a guy with his arm strength to do that, that's a positive trait. And I think they're going to be really, really good on offense once again.
Yeah. There have been 796 passes thrown in the 2 years Josh Heupel's been the head coach at Tennessee. And Mark Ham, my wife's cousin up there in Knoxville, we call him Rocky Top Tennessee Tailgate Report when he's on with us. But he provided this stat, 6 interceptions out of those 796 passes. I mean, that's a hell of a stat. I wasn't at the game, but Florida and quarterback John Reeves and Carlos Alvarez, the Cuban Comet, came to Auburn in 1969 Brother Bill Oliver was the defensive backs coach for Shug Jordan's staff. Auburn picked off 9 passes from Florida in that one game, which I believe is still a national record. Those are some incredible stats, Matt.
9 passes in a game? Is that true?
Yeah, it's a fact.
My gosh, sometimes you can't get
Them's guaranteed and certified.
You can't get 9 picks in a secondary in a season sometimes and still have a very good defense. That's incredible. That's, DBs now, they love that, the whole pass breakup, pass deflection stat back in the 70s and 80s. That probably wasn't a stat, but that's a good way of judging, especially cornerbacks this year is just the coverage stat alone. But I'm really excited about watching the East. And I'll tell you, going back to Vince's point about, how they're perceived nationally. I mean, if Georgia's not there, then they are a college football candidate in my mind.
Yeah.
And that game's still going to be played, I think, in Knoxville this year, right? And
yes.
You just never know because, even though we know Georgia's got a lot of talent, a lot of positions, the quarterback position matters. How's that going to play out? There's a lot of excitement too, I think. If you just look at what they did in a short period of time with Heupel. I mean, I just think he has transformed the mindset of how they call a football game there. They're going to score a ton of points. And just to your point, Vince, they only had 4 on that team as opposed to 8. And now they're predicted to finish second because honestly, looking into last year, you go back to Levis at Kentucky and Stoops is a great defensive coach. So, I get how that played out, but boy, I tell you what, Tennessee is fun to watch, man. They are one of the if I'm a fan from the Big Ten and I want to watch any team in the SEC play, I'm going to watch Tennessee. I mean, they're exciting, man. I mean, win, lose, or draw, they are exciting the way they move the football.
It's going to come down to quarterback play with Milton and then the defense.
Yeah.
Can they get a pass rush? Can they be better on the back end and not have those horrific games? They had a number of those really bad games. Can they eliminate those kind of games and just be a little bit better? They're healthier. Will that equate to them being better? We'll see. They need to replace their top pass rusher from a year ago and Byron Young, who's a 3rd-round pick of the Rams. They have some young, twitchy, talented second-year players. Are they going to be better? We'll find out once camp starts August 2nd. They report on August 1st, and we get a better look, and then we'll really know in games. But, I asked Joe Milton, because he's a leader and he sees the guys on the other side, who are some defenders that have stood out, and he mentioned a lot of the veterans on that side of the ball. So is that a good thing? That means those guys are even better than they have been? Or does that mean, well, there's none of the young players that are so impressive that are passing over some of those guys that maybe at times had some struggles? So we'll see how that plays out. But he definitely he said the communication is a lot better defensively, and he's been impressed by what he's seen for the defense. But, we'll know more in practice, and then obviously in games will be telling also.
Yeah,
hey,
and I think Memphis.
Rob,
Yeah.
I just want to tell Vince, as a Chicago Bear fan, we are excited about getting that mauling tackle. Is it Darrell Wright or Darnell Wright? I mean, just
Darnell. Yeah.
What a physical presence, and he's already made a lot of impacts in OTAs up in Chicago. So he's a very impressive young man.
Yeah, that's consistent with what we've heard as well. So it was very, very cool to see him go to a city like that. I think they'll appreciate his style. And, they needed line help for sure. And he's going to start from the jump, I think.
We got it. Great young man.
I think he was a 5-star coming out of high school out of Parkersburg, West Virginia.
West Virginia, correct. Yeah. And he
and-
nearly transferred.
Yeah.
He nearly transferred, and there was a coaching change. Milton is that way too. Milton could have taken off. Darnell Wright could have taken off. They have a lot of guys that maybe it wasn't working out for them as well that have stuck around. I think they have 30 seniors or redshirt seniors on this team. Wow. And 30 freshmen also. So they're either really old or really young in on their roster. It's an interesting dynamic. But yeah, Darnell Wright was a 5-star. People were frustrated that he wasn't playing like a 5-star. And then when he decided to stick around, he said, I'm going to get to work. His offensive line coach, Glenn Ellerby, challenged him. And then he turned it around and was able to become a first-round pick. So, again, don't judge guys permanently based on what you see at certain stages of their career. They can develop and improve. Maturity, weight room, all that kind of stuff can impact them.
Well, it's like I tell people, if the stock market goes down 1,200 points in a day, I'll tell clients, say, look, that is a snapshot. And those prices that are put in the newspaper, in the back of the newspaper every day, those are a courtesy for people who are selling their stocks on those given days. And you see one moment, and I got to tell you, and we're going to switch to Franz Beard's going to be on in just a second, GatorbaitMedia.com. But Vince, I was really impressed with the guys that I interviewed up there, student athletes, coaches, whatever. But also Kingsley Egaquin, offensive lineman for Florida. I keep going back to this, and I've been sending this out to people and going, quit being so negative, people. There's guys like Kingsley in college football. He's like, at the end of the day, it's kind of a silly reason. He goes, your money, basically you stay at your school, you work hard, you get your degree, you're going to make your money. Getting a little bit of money now, then you got to question, what kind of teammate are you? I know Matt had to go to a meeting, but I think that there's a lot to be said, Vince, and Franz is GatorbaitMedia.com. And Franz, you probably know Kingsley, but I was just really, I'm standing 4 feet from him. They're interviewing, and he really smart guy, smart kid. I have kids his age, but I love to hear that. He's like, what are you here for? Are you all in? Are you a Gator? Are you a Vol? And Joe Milton, I did ask Joe Milton the question, do you take a lot of pride being from the muck? That's what y'all know what the muck is, Vince, Lake Okeechobee, Pahokee. And he did. He goes, yeah. He goes, man, I'm from a small town. He goes, we got a Dollar General. We got a Choke and Puke, whatever. And we got a gas station, and we got one other store. But he goes, yeah, you learn about hard work growing up in the country. This is why we love college football. He goes to Michigan, and he goes to Michigan, and it doesn't work out. He goes to Tennessee. He's the starter. He gets hurt. He doesn't quit. But what I really took away from it was he got close to Hendon Hooker out of Greensboro, North Carolina, played at Virginia Tech, transferred himself. So there's a lot of great stories in college football. And I'm just sick and tired of the negativity and the people that just the BMW culture. We got to get rid of the BMW culture. Bitch, moan, and whine. Okay, stop. There are a lot of great stories out there. And Vince, you do them. And again, I know you're tired. You've been up since in my time, probably 3:30 or 4. Again, love to get you to come duck hunting with us because that's the norm. The problem is a lot of these guys stay up drinking until 12, 1, or 2. And then they got to be up at 4. And it's like, oh, my God, it's called jet lag. But anyway, Vince, before you go, let people know how they can follow you, keep up with you and all the great work. And as always, we really appreciate you taking time out of your day to join us and everybody up in Knoxville at the Sports Animal. Thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate it. It's not like I'm going to bed or anything when I get off with you. There's still a lot more work to be done, but I appreciate it anyway. Yeah, you can follow me on Twitter. It's at Vince Sports, VINTE Sports. And then our website, 991thesportsanimal.com. Right smack in the middle is our central page from the SEC Football Media Days. I haven't tallied up how many interviews we did.
Yeah, you wanted to plug your site. Do that. Remember what you said in that text? Do that before you go. My apologies.
Yeah, no, it's cool. The central page is where it's at. There's audio, all of our audio, our interviews, all of those are there on our website. Tons of one-on-ones with everybody around the league, media, players, coaches, all of that is there. Greg Sankey, all the audio is there in one spot, plus video versions of a lot of interviews as well. So it's been it's unbelievable how much content is there. A lot of Rob, we don't even have a chance to get on the air because there's so much of it. We don't have that much time. Practice is about to start here soon. So anyway, exclusive content there. Check it out, 991thesportsanimal.com on the central page. And then all of you guys will enjoy it and learn a lot about the league, not just Tennessee.
Yeah, you sent me that link. I'm going to be watching it. I've got to get, when I get through here, I've got to go cut the 5 acres here at the farm. And so I will be listening. Seriously, I'll have that on my headsets. You got to listen when you can. But Vince, as always, thanks for listening, and go Vols.
All right. Sounds good. Appreciate you guys. Have a great day.
You too. Franz Beard, Frank Duffy. If it was with Frank Duffy, we'd have the 2 most interesting men in the world and 2 of the smartest. But I'm telling you, I was lucky. I loved it when Buddy asked if I would help out for Gatorade Media. I'm like, hell, I'd run through a wall for him and you and Ben and the whole crew and Allie Peak Wilbur, the whole Gatorade crew. You got a great perspective, obviously, on Florida, but on college sports, life. But that Kingsley Egonquin, man, in the Florida, how do you pronounce it?
Egwakun.
Kingsley Egwakun, yeah. And where is he from? I did not look that up.
Jacksonville.
That's right, Jacksonville, home of 38 Special and Leonard Skinner. No, just impressive, man.
Molly Hatchet.
And Molly Hatchet, that's right.
The Allman Brothers were. Well, people don't realize that the Allman Brothers were the house band at ATO for a couple of years back in the days when they were known as the Allman Joys. They were based out. Are you kidding me? No, they were based out of Daytona Beach, and they basically became the house band at ATO. Then they went over. Dwayne and Greg and Barry Oakley went over there to Jacksonville. They met up with Butch Trucks, and next thing you know, they have a band. They ended up. Everybody thinks they were from Makin, and that's where they were. That's where they were based at the time that Dwayne died, and then Barry Oakley died a year later. But Gainesville was home. Gainesville was as hot a music town as there was. Stephen Stills is from Gainesville. Okay. Went to Gainesville High School with my sister. Don Felder and Bernie Ledden, 2 of the original guys, along with Glenn Fry and Don Henley, they started a little band called the Eagles. They were pretty good too. I grew up with Tom Petty and went to high school with Tommy. Gainesville was a pretty hot music town back in those days. Marty Gerard of the Motels, another one. Yeah. But back in those days, Gainesville was just a hot music town. I mean, like I said, the ATO house, the Allman Brothers were basically the house band, and Dwayne would go over at Lipham Music Company and teach guitar, and Greg would teach playing the organ stuff. They were a pretty good group of guys here.
Well, it's like I tell people about Florida. They people typically around the country think of Miami, Dade County, Broward, and Palm Beach County, and I say, well, listen, if you go to Florida, Central Florida is no different than Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, Tennessee, Arkansas, the South. It is farm country. It's very rural. Alachua County, where Gainesville is. I did not know that much music history, but I'm telling you, Kingsley, just an impressive young man, and a leader, and that's the stories. You can go, dig around the dump if you want to at your local landfill and find all the bad stuff you want. But go look for the good stuff. I mean, we what does it make you smarter? Does it give you power if you can say college football's ruined, the portal, the NIL is ruined? You can say that all you want, but go back and how many times we've heard that the stock market is dead in the last 50 or 60 years. 1974, remember, after the market had gone down 2 years, 47% decline, the death of equities. I'll never forget that. And you go back in 1982, again, the death of equities. Next 5 years, the market increased, went up by 250 points, 250%. So, folks, college football is going to be fine. It'll be better, actually.
Well, here's the thing and I think Lane Kiffin's right to bring it out. We've got to get a handle on these things.
Yeah.
And because we do love the game. And here's the thing that I've said for years. Nothing out there, and I agree. Urban Meyer also is. I've heard him say this on multiple occasions. There is no game out there that has lifted more kids out of poverty, abject poverty, into a life where they can not only prosper themselves, but they can pass on the prosperity to their communities. And there's no other game like it, like football.
Yeah.
And I think one of the biggest reasons is because I can be a superstar in football, but if 10 guys don't do their job, I'm nothing. You know, I mean, we've seen guys like this who were mired with mediocrity around them, and they go to the NFL all of a sudden and they're stars or something like this. There's no other game like football to do that. And you think about it, you got 85 kids on scholarship. All right. Let's just say 10 of those are real difference makers. And I'm not talking about on football field, but 10 of those guys are real difference makers, and they go out there and they start businesses, etc. I'll give you a good example. Everybody remembers the hit heard round the world. That was Lawrence Wright in 1995 when he put one on Joey Kent. And quite frankly, I thought Joey Kent was dead. I really did. That's how hard the hit was. Ball goes flying everywhere. From that point on, people don't realize after that, Florida ended up beating Tennessee. I think the final score was like 59-35 or something like that. It was bad. 62-35. That's what it was.
When Peyton Manning back in 95.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And they had a picture of Peyton Manning on the front cover of Sports Illustrated looking like he lost his puppy. And but the thing about it is Lawrence Wright hit Joey Kent. And I had looking through binoculars, people asking me, he says, is he dead? Is he dead? And I said, no, I see spit bubbles coming out of his mouth. He's alive. And that's how honest to goodness, that's how I knew that he was alive.
Yeah.
That's one of the two hardest hits we've ever had at that stadium. But Lawrence Wright goes on, wins the Thorpe Award in 96 as the best defensive back in the country. Lawrence Wright's down in Miami. He has a school, an apprentice school that teaches kids how to be carpenters, brick masons, etc., like that. He has a construction company. This is the example of what college sports will do. He's from Liberty City originally. You know, Liberty City is infamous. You know, and that's where Lawrence Wright's from. And yet here's a guy that got his college degree in building construction. He employs people. He teaches people how to be employed. This is the perfect example of what college football will do. This is why a guy like Kingsley Eguakun is going to sit there and charm you with the fact that he's poised, he's intelligent, he's got humor, he's got the intellect. This is a guy that I don't know where he's going to be in life 20 years from now. But wherever it is, he will be successful, and he will be raising people up with him wherever he is. And this is what college football can do. And this is why we have to address the problems of NIL and the portal and things like this. Loyalty. Kingsley, one of the things we love about Kingsley is loyalty.
Yep.
The problem is that the transfer portal and NIL, the way they're currently structured, encourage people to ditch the loyalty, and it's all about me. Well, as you know, Rob, football is the one game out there that if it's all about you, your team has problems.
Yes.
It's got to be all about the team. It can't be all about me. It's got to be all about the team. And if it's not all about the team, then we do have issues.
Well, we do. And I think that football, you talked about what it means. I was talking to a young man. I have him on the show a lot. He's 27 from Maplesville, Alabama. I love him. Damian Mitchell has a show on Jocks Radio, 6 to 7 a.m. in Birmingham, Monday through Friday. Then he's helping produce Mac and Cube, Cole Kubelik and Greg McElroy, 7 to 10 on Jocks in Birmingham. And I've had him on the show several times. I met him was last year, August 22nd, Kevin Skarbinski and the CoachSafely.org dinner there at Vestavia Hills Country Club. He sat at my table with me, and we were talking and stuff, and I saw Tommy Agee, one of my favorite Auburn men, football player from Maplesville, Alabama, 82 to 86, played in the NFL with the Cowboys for a long time as a fullback, grew up working on a pulpwood mill in Maplesville, Alabama. And I saw Damien up at Media Days. We talked a lot. He came up. I said, how many people live in Maplesville? He goes, now? I said, yeah. He goes, I don't know, maybe 500. I said, well, all I know is that when I met you, we were talking. When Tommy Agee came over there, he gave you a big old hug, and he said, oh, yeah, everybody in Maplesville is so proud of Tommy, and then they all support him. You think about what sports do for people in these small towns. I mean, guys come from big towns, small towns, whatever, but you're right. It's the impact that they have. And whatever you do, loyalty is a two-way street. You work for a company, you loyal to them, they're loyal to you. And you see that in sports, and people love to give these cynical comments like, well, the coaches make all this money. Then, the players should be able to. Well, you know what? That's not how it works. I remember my first job out of college working in TV at Channel 3 in Columbus, Georgia. In today's world, what they paid me then, I would be considered living in poverty. Okay. I mean, and that's just the way the TV business is. But you do what you love and you love what you do. You'll never work a day in your life. I mean, I had a client texting me yesterday at 11:02 a.m. Central, got news about something that we're working on. And man, I spent the next, hour and a half getting stuff ready, looking at stuff, getting everything, setting up the meeting. And I was talking to my dad, who's 95, and I said, I learned that from you. I mean, you call 5:30 or 6 o'clock on a Saturday morning. Where's Bob? You know damn well where he is. He's at the office. About 11:30 or 12, he's heading over to the club in the men's grill, and he's going to meet with the knowledge, the round table. But you got to make yourself accessible. And a guy like Kingsley, a guy like Joe Milton, who was, how many times could he have quit at Tennessee? We need to be focusing on these stories. Friends, think about when we integrated football. Pat Dye famously said, Coach Bryant called me from Arizona. He was at a football conference, I think, with John McKay. And John McKay said, Paul, we're going to sign the best football players in Alabama. And he said, who? He said, one of them's Wilbur Jackson, running back down in Ozark. That's in the Wiregrass for people that don't know where Ozark is. So Pat Dye went down there and got him. He knew how to talk to him. He grew up on a farm in Blythe, Georgia. They had about 3,000 acres, and he knew how to talk to that kid. And he said, Coach Dye famously said January 2nd, 1984, the Sugar Bowl, Auburn against Michigan, the night before the dinner at Antoine's or Galatoire's, whatever. He said, listen, all the federal government did, busing and court decisions and all, whatever, and none of that had the impact on pulling people together in the South like college football. Ain't nothing ever has, nothing ever will, because nobody ever gets up there and complains when you're winning a national championship. There's too many black guys. There's too many white guys on the team. Nobody cares, okay? So when you go out there and you see the real stories that are there, people they don't care. If you're feeling down about America, and I know it's not hard right now to get a little frustrated if you watch the news, go to Fort Benning, go to Eglin Air Force Base for 4th of July picnic or Labor Day or some kind of a 32-year Sergeant Major retirement ceremony. You'll feel great about America. America's the people. It's not, a country with a government. It's a government, but it's the people that have a government. And there's a lot of great stories, Franz. You write about them in your daily thoughts. You're a gifted writer. You've experienced a lot. And bottom line, at SEC Media Days, we saw some of the best people in America, coaches and student athletes. And I told Herb Vincent, Director of Communications, and Chuck Dunlap and all those people, they don't realize it maybe, but over 1,200 people were there. Thank them and everybody at that hotel. That was an amazing event. But there's a lot of great stories. your daily thoughts. What were you writing about this morning? I haven't even had a chance to see my show prep, is what I call your writing.
Well, I wrote about the fact that Florida, people are downplaying Florida. And I got to tell you what, if you sleep on Florida, you're going to make a mistake doing it. Last year, I made mention earlier in my column today, back in 1976, which was the first year of the Tampa Bay Bucks, John McKay was asked, he says, Coach, what about the execution of your offense? He says, I'm for it.
One of the greatest comebacks of all time.
Last year, Billy Napier, had he been asked about the execution of his defense, he probably would have said, I'm for it. Now, let me give you some examples. He's got this new young whippersnapper, and he is Austin Armstrong. He is fuzzy faced. I asked him if he shaves. He says, yeah, I do. I said, where do you have a whisker to shave?
How old is he?
29 years old.
Wow.
But he is, let me get people say, well, Florida this, Florida that. Let me tell you something. Last year, Southern Miss tied for 4th in the NCAA in sacking the quarterback. They were 3rd in tackles for loss. They had 109 tackles for loss for 424 yards in losses. Florida was 129th in getting off the field on 3rd down. Southern Miss was 48th. Florida almost 50%. They were 36%. And you think about things like that. Okay, that may sound like trivial, 36 or 49%. But here's the thing. Florida had 3 games last year, Tennessee being one of them. Vanderbilt and Florida State were the other 2. That they have the ball with the last possession of the game and a chance to win the game. Now you think about this. In all 3 of those games, had the defense gotten one more stop, Florida wins that game. You think about it. Florida wins, or the stop puts Florida in total position to win the game easily without getting down to the last play. Florida was one play away, one defensive stop away from being 9-3 in the regular season last year. If the offense shows up against Kentucky, people forget the defense in the Kentucky game. Kentucky didn't even get 200 yards on that defense. That was a bad defense, but they held them. And that's the game in which Anthony Richardson goes out there and he's swinging out wide, and he has a lane big enough to run 3 trucks through. And rather than take the lane and get the sure first down, he decides to throw the ball and it gets intercepted. They score. Florida lost that game, like was it 16-10 or something like that. It was 16-6, I think it was. Some ridiculously low score, and that's a game Florida should have won. No question about it. Florida should have won that game. Florida should never lose to Kentucky, period. I realize that Mark Stoops is a nice guy, but, let me put it this way. Mark Stoops is, I think, one of the smartest coaches in the world. You know why? He's put himself in a position where if he goes 6-6, they will love him and erect a statue to him, and he'll never get fired. If he goes, if he goes to a place like, for example, Florida State was mentioned. He was mentioned a couple of years ago before they hired Mike Norvell. At FSU, they're going to expect you to win.
Yes.
Not 6-6. They're going to expect 10 wins a year minimum.
Yeah. No, they are. We're going to take a quick commercial break. I'm going to come back, and I love Bobby Bowden. I mean, what he did at Florida State was amazing. But we had this interesting discussion at media days with some of the guys I was with. What is the greatest legacy of Bobby Bowden at Florida State? Is 37 years of coaching and several national championships, numerous conference championships in the ACC, all that. 14 straight years, finishing in the top four, 87 to 2000? Or is his greatest legacy walking away from an invitation to join the Southeastern Conference? We'll be right back with Franz Beard, GatorBaitMedia.com. All of you listening right now, everywhere. Thank you. Be right back.
Red River Ford and Toyota, located in Wynne, Arkansas. If you're in the market for a new or used car, truck, or SUV, call, go online, or drop by and see them. Located 45 minutes from Memphis, go off the 4-city exit on I-40 and go north about 15 minutes on Highway 1. Easy to work with and still believe in customer service. If you live out of town, they will deliver your vehicle to you. RedRiverFordToyota.com. Just see what they can do.
Strengthen your seed zone this spring with quality tillage equipment from House Industries. Located in Cherry Valley, Arkansas, House Industries specializes in manufacturing superior equipment that will minimize your downtime and keep you working in the field. To ensure the highest quality control, all design, fabrication, and testing takes place in a 99,000 square foot manufacturing facility located right here in the heart of the Delta. Locate your nearest House equipment dealer online at houseindustriesinc.com.
House Industries, breaking ground.
Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
All right, Rob Browne back with Franz Beard, GatorBaitMedia.com. And before Chris Lee joins us, and he's up in Nashville, the Southeastern 14, also Vandy Rivals reporter, what is the greatest legacy of Bobby Bowden? All the wins we talked about, or that he walked away from joining the Southeastern Conference and chose the ACC? Real quick before we go to Chris.
Well, I think Bobby's legacy is going to be 14 seasons, but let's face it, the fact that he did choose the ACC, where that's going to have the effect is financially, because right now FSU is complaining, hey, we're only going to be making we're not even going to be making $45 million a year from the ACC until 2026.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, in 2026, there are projections that say that with the additions of Texas and Oklahoma, the SEC will be making $95 to $100 million a year. And FSU said we can't compete with that. So, he made the choice that I think at the time, and if we didn't have these media deals like we have now, would have been considered probably the greatest move ever, because he chose the conference that he could win. And, he could go 8-0 in the ACC without blinking an eye.
Yeah.
And, it turns out the legacy is going to be financial, and it's going to be felt throughout the sports program. The fact that they're going to need money for facilities, et cetera, like that. They're lagging way behind Florida now in facilities.
Yeah, it is. And it's interesting as we go to Chris Lee up in Nashville. I met Chris at SEC Media Days, and I've been, living in Memphis. I've been going to Nashville all my life. I love it. And by the way, downtown Nashville, in spite of the construction, it was great, because when I got up to go run in the morning downtown on Broadway, you just had to realize that there were detours and traffic would come out of nowhere. But man, the only negative thing was, and I love some good country music, Chris, and you're from Nashville. God, I wanted to hear Midland play out. I mean, apparently they're a good band, but it got rained out, as a lot of things did last week. We had two big storms. They hit Memphis first, and then they hit Nashville. But Franz, I met Chris and George Plaster and a lot of the Nashville media people there. And let me just tell you what, these guys are damn good. And Chris, you cover Vanderbilt and the Titans. And you got a lot of season ticket holders for the Titans in Memphis. I work with them. That's our team. And there are a lot of Nashville people that support the Grizzlies. And you got Vanderbilt. When I first started selling bonds 32 years ago, the first ones I ever sold were for the Vanderbilt Medical Center. At that time, they had an endowment of $3.2 billion. I knew everything about it. Now it's close to $11 billion. And they've also had Mr. Krabs from SpongeBob SquarePants, the tightest, cheapest man in the world, historically, is the athletic director. And they're going, I'm the only one that'll spend money on their athletics. But apparently 600 million plus is now going in. Bring us up to speed. First off, welcome to Sidelines. It's kind of like Hollywood Squares. We got Jonathan Winters up in the right. I'll be the Carl from Sling Blade over here, but welcome to Sidelines. Hopefully this is the first of many, many visits in the next 35 or 40 years that you're on with us.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's quite a time to be in Nashville.
Yeah, that was awesome last week, wasn't it?
Yeah. I mean, it was awesome for me because I didn't have to drive. Well, I mean, I had to drive and there's traffic everywhere. But yeah, it was great to have it in our city. I think that it just feels like anytime Nashville has anything, it feels like my colleagues in the media like it. Obviously, it's decently centrally located. There's a lot of things to do. Now, the issue last week was the traffic was awful and construction was throwing a wrench in everything. And our Wi-Fi also stunk, if you want to add another complaint. But other than that, I have no complaints.
Yeah. Well, we got there Sunday night at the Grand Hyatt on whatever you call that collection of streets out there. But again, as a kid growing up, going to the state capitol on every holiday with my dad being an architect to go meet with people, I know I love Nashville. It's, my grandfather and his brother both went to VMI and then went to law school at Vanderbilt. A lot of my family. I'm going to tell you what, that city, when they do something, they are all in. I mean, it is beyond. I got of the media days I've been to, I think that's without a doubt the best one we've been to, and it was also the largest, Franz. Over 1,200 people there. It was funny to hear some people from the SEC office, talking about people going, well, I'm not going to go this year. It's too big. He goes, that's fine. We got over 1,200 people coming. Chris, what were your takeaways? First off, let's talk about Vanderbilt. You talk about a school that has, outside of Texas A&M, they've got more money. Let's be honest. They got more money than any school in the SEC. Medical school, law school, no vet school, but Clark Lee, he's a Nashville guy. I'm sure you know him, and also Barton Simmons in recruiting. What do you see going on at Vanderbilt? Because I know it gets frustrating when you think about Tim Corbin did it in baseball and still does it, and whoever the bowling coach is doing it.
Yeah, I covered Clark back when he started playing here. Used to sit and watch practice with his dad, and so we have had a long view of this thing and everything that they're up against. And I think when Clark took the job, look, you can't play at Vanderbilt and not have some idea of what you're up against. And it really, other than the brief spell of James Franklin, it hasn't really gotten any better for more than maybe a year at a time. Bobby Johnson won the Music City Bowl back in 2008. And there's been an occasional win over a down Tennessee team, but not much to hang your hat on. But Rob, when he took that job, it was worse than he thought. The culture was awful. I mean, the neglect, you talked about the money that they haven't spent on things. That was part of it. But just, I think the COVID year under Derek Mason and the mess with Sarah Fuller and all the things that went into 2020, it just left morale at a point that it was almost underneath the floor. Clark Lee talked about he had this big plan for when he takes the job. He's got this big speech in his head. I mean, I think we've all thought about, when I get to X point in my profession, this is what it's going to be like. And he had it in his head that, okay, I'm going to go and I'm going to talk to the team. It's going to be this great speech and everybody's going to be fired up and we're going to be leaving to go work out and whatever afterwards. And he had kids slouched over in his seat, not paying attention and maybe being on their phones. He said that the body language was awful. And I think he had to scrap a lot of what he was thinking in the moment. And the point is, you have Vandy rebuilds. And anytime Vanderbilt changes a coach, unless it's maybe a James Franklin, or Jerry DiNardo taking a better job, he's usually left the program in a bad place. So Clark had that on top of those other things, and it's been a climb. But I thought last year, winning 5 games, put them ahead of schedule. Now, look, some of the losses they took were ugly. And I think you have to think about that too against the very, very top echelon of the league, the Alabamas, the Floridas, or excuse me, not the Floridas, the Georgias, the Tennessees, they got the doors blown off. And I think that goes to athleticism, which they're still going to need some more of, but it's getting better. But I guess where I'm going is he had a horrible rebuild, not just in terms of talent, but in terms of culture. And I thought last year when they were at the end of the season, they lost 26 games in a row, they could have packed the tents and folded them in. Instead, they beat Kentucky. And with Florida knowing, hey, this is a team that won and got some confidence and having to be ready for that, they then beat Florida too. So I think he's doing a good job. He got an extension. I think the program is on the right track, but boy, it's just a tough hill to climb in this league with all the teams and all the money being spent.
Yeah, Franz?
Well, I agree that the situation it had to be tougher than anybody thought. And Vanderbilt's who everybody wants for homecoming. You bring in Vanderbilt, you win. We like going to Nashville because we'll have it's like a home game for us because we'll have more people than Vanderbilt. I go to tailgates at LSU and they're slapping food on me that, some of which I got to ask after I eat it because I don't want to know while I'm eating exactly what I'm eating. You go to LSU, you go to Vanderbilt, and they say, "Would you like some Chardonnay, sir?" No, I don't. Give me a damn beer. This is the Southeastern Conference. We do not, Chardonnay, we can have that at home in private when we don't want anybody to know that we're drinking it. But, I don't want any grapes and some Chardonnay in my tailgate. Sorry. And we go in I'll give you an example. You go in the press box, press box food is notoriously bad. And and now everybody's just giving you a packaged sandwich or something like that and saying, here it is, when we used to have catered food that was brought in that was really good stuff. But you'd go to Vanderbilt and all of a sudden you're getting grapes and cheese and no Chardonnay in the press box. I grew up when, first drink I ever had was in the LSU press box and the sports editor of the Times-Picayune said, I'm 16 years old. And he says, you ever had a drink, boy? And I went, no, sir. He says, you're having one now. And because they served alcohol, they had an open bar in the press box during the game.
Yeah.
I mean, golly, and LSU still has beer after the game for the press.
Yeah.
This is Southeast. This is the Southeastern Conference. Yeah. I think we all want Vanderbilt to start acting like you're in the Southeastern Conference. We know you got smart people there. We got smart people at Florida, too. We're the number 5 public institution in America. We got lots of smart people. You got them, too. But our smart people know how to raise hell. By golly, let me get a beer. Let me get 10 of them for the ball game, and I'll show you how much hell I can raise.
Yeah.
And well, friend, it's like, well, I've had 2 Chardonnays. I'm sorry, I can't have any more. And I love Vanderbilt. I love getting up there. I love Nashville. The campus is wonderful. The people that you meet are really good people. But by gosh, make it an SEC atmosphere.
Yeah. And Chris, along the lines of what he's saying, I think that's what all of us. I'm an Auburn grad, but I've got a lot of Vanderbilt friends and family and all. They're going, man, if they would just, take the gloves off, look at basketball. That is the social thing to do in Nashville is Memorial Gymnasium. Never had a losing season until Bryce Drew got there. Look at Vanderbilt baseball. Tim Corbin. My in-laws from my first marriage, they live in Franklin out there at Fieldstone Farms. I go up there a lot. And look what they've done with the Titans. They've embraced them. Man, the Predators hosted us for media days Monday night. The Titans at Nissan Stadium Wednesday night. My God, that city knows how to entertain. If Vanderbilt ever decides they're tired of waiting to be great and just in the hospitality, Chris, we're both going off a lot, but I think I think in talking with you, I know you are. Let's just embrace who we are. We're in the South.
Yeah. They're getting there. The press box food the last couple of years has been a lot different than when you guys were here last. They actually did offer beer after games. I don't remember if it was last year or the year before. I'm not a beer drinker, so I didn't pay as much attention. But that's funny. They did start doing that a little bit. You look around. I was over there. I was in the area Saturday. Went by just to see what the field looked like. I don't know if you guys got a chance to see it, but
I did not.
That closed end zone is now no more. They have 2 open end zones because they are getting ready to do not getting ready to. They are doing massive renovations right now. So you've got 2 open end zones. Capacity this year is probably going to be 30,000 or maybe a little bit under. But they're going to have 2 really, and you can go on that. Now, look, they've done a poor job of telling the world about what they're doing. And I think some of that is academics has frowned upon athletics and its success for a long time. Somebody explain it to me like this. You've got the academic types at Vanderbilt that sort of see football and basketball and baseball as if we went and started a pickup game. And so if you're really good at it, they see that as a waste of time, that you should be spending your time on other things. There's been this culture there. I spent a long time, and I know I'm going roundabout
you're making
somewhere.
sense.
It's
good stuff, Chris. I promise.
I always kind of wondered, because for years they've talked about, we're going to renovate and we're going to do this. And they would talk about it for a couple of years. That was enough to get the fans excited. Then you look up and nothing would happen. And you do excuses like, well, football's a dying game because of concussions. And they would just recycle different lines. Or they'd say, well, we don't have an athletic director who can raise money. We're waiting for him to retire. Or it would be, well, the chancellor won't let us raise money. Or it'd be the fundraising people from the school. And it was always this shell game.
Yeah.
If you could never really find out. And people would say, well, that's the way it's in the past, but it's changing. And you look up 2 years later and it was all the same. And they would continue to recycle all these excuses. And so I started trying to do a lot of detective work. And this took probably hundreds of hours because it's a private school.
Yeah.
And it was really hard. Even the people that were in the middle of it weren't always honest with you about stuff. And I found out it's a cultural thing that just goes back 60 or 70 years to where, again, it's back to that. If you're doing really good and spending a lot of money on sports, it's resources of time and money you've wasted elsewhere. And so it always, if a guy tried to change that, you're in the minority and you'll get run out of that place. Well, they had a chancellor that finally came in, Daniel Diermeyer, during COVID in 2020, and he said enough. One of the first things he did is he spent, I don't know, a couple of hours talking with Malcolm Turner, who was then the AD till they ran him out. That's a different story. Yeah. But he got to know his coaches. He got to know Tim Corbin. Tim Corbin was the guy that basically helped select Clark Lee. He went around and said, hey, we're going to have to find a football coach. But let's find the one guy here that really knows how to win and how to navigate the system. And Tim Corbin was very instrumental in bringing Clark Lee in. But you've got this chancellor that's decided finally, okay, no more of the bull. Let's go win some games and let's spend some money. And again, you can see it visually that the football stadium is in the process. By 2025, they're going to have 2 large buildings in both end zones. It's going to be, I think it'll be small. It'll be 34,000, but I think it's got an argument that it'll be one of the nicer looking venues in the league. They're adding to Hawkins Field some premium seating upgrades. They're adding some restaurants in the stadium. They've been doing some stuff to the basketball gym too. And again, it's going to be $600 to $700 million by the time they're done. But the big thing is you finally had a chancellor that came in and said, hey, athletics is the front porch of the school. There's a lot of money here. The SEC pays us a lot of money, and it's time for us to hold up our end of the bargain. Yeah. And look, there's a lag on what's going to happen, right? Because, again, facilities won't be built for a couple of years. You've got a basketball team that had a couple of years ago the only winless season in the history of the SEC, back to a 16 or 18 game schedule. I'm not sure if you go back to when they played 5 games or something, but I think since the 1960s, it's the only team that had a winless season. You had a football team that had 26 game conference losing. So you have, and you don't recruit to that, right? When you're bad, it's not like the draft where you get the first pick in pro sports. No, that sends you more to the bottom. So point I'm making is they had all the facility stuff that had to be overcome. They had the losing that's had to be overcome. And you're starting to see finally some teams that are maybe starting to peek their head above ground. And I'm not saying they're going to go out and, set the world on fire the next year or two in football and basketball, but you're finally getting to a point where they're at least competitive and respectable again. And that of the facilities are things that you can recruit to at that point.
Franz, let me say this. I think you will agree with me. Where the hell has this guy been? Thank you for saying. I mean, Chris, you took all that complex minutia and put it in the vernacular with such ease. It's refreshing because, again, you think about, in my business, in addition to doing the show as a financial advisor for 32 years and counting, people paralysis by analysis, they just they can't make a decision. And you think about Nashville, when they commit to something, living in Memphis, believe me, there's a lot of rivalry in those cities, and there's a lot of fight for the talent in the state of Tennessee, which is 3 states, by the way, the 3 stars, friends, west of the Tennessee River, Middle Tennessee, and East Tennessee. And it goes back to the war between the states. I mean, middle and west and east was a different deal. It is so funny. But Vanderbilt, I think about what could be. And now they're spending some money. Again, I remember at a pep rally, November 4th or 5th, 1983, Pat Sullivan was at Auburn. Auburn was playing Boomer Esiason in Maryland the next day. Auburn was number 3, Maryland number 7 in the country. And he said, look, people can say all the time about football's too big, academics matter most. He goes, I get that. Pat was a very smart guy. But he said, when you're winning in football, your alumni, your fans, your supporters are a hell of a lot more likely to pull out that checkbook and write you a big check. And Franz, you've told me the story, and Ward Pell, the widow of the late Charlie Pell, who, no offense to Steve Spurrier or Urban Meyer, but I've always said Charlie Pell is the one who woke up Florida football. He gets discredited, but y'all, Franz, you told me the story. Ward Pell told me the story about Charlie Pell, who grew up, in the South, sitting on the front porch with a man named Mr. Ben Hill Griffin eating swamp cabbage. And I think they spent several hours out there. They didn't talk about football. I talked about life. But when they got through, Mr. Ben Hill Griffin wrote the largest check at that time ever given to Florida athletics. So you think about the number of people, Franz and Chris, that I know that are Vanderbilt alumni that love that school. And I wonder if any of them have ever been asked to support Vanderbilt athletics. What you said about Tim Corbin is a knockout punch. I love it. You get a guy like that from Maine who said, I will build a championship baseball program and go after every top baseball player within 250 miles. And he's done it. I don't know who the bowling coach is, but I don't give a damn what sport it is. When you put national champion out to the side of your brand, that's powerful.
Go ahead, Franz. I'm sorry.
Vanderbilt has, Tim Corbin is and Kevin O'Sullivan were assistants together at Clemson. And they both have the same mentality, which is Kevin went to Virginia. He was all ACC academic. He's a very smart guy. And you look at how Florida recruits. Florida goes out there and uses this thing called the Bright Future Scholarship. Almost all of our players are from the state of Florida. And if you qualify for Bright Futures, you can get almost your entire tuition paid for. And we got somebody who, because of NIL, every athlete walk on or scholarship in any sport, in every sport at Florida, eats 3 meals a day at the new Hefner Center. You get a kid a baseball with an academic, like he's got Bright Futures and he's got the meals done. Boy, that 11.8 scholarships goes a long way. And Tim Corbin has mastered getting the right money for guys. And what does he do? He recruits guys that can actually think, that can actually go to class and do well. And guess what? If you can do that at Vanderbilt, there's money. If you're smart and you want to go to school at Vanderbilt, they'll find the money for you because they've got that much of it.
Yeah. Chris, I mean, keep going. I mean, we got about 5 more minutes, but we got to get you back on here because I'm getting a lot of reaction of people going, where's this guy been? Thank God I sat down at the lunch table and met you and George. But Franz, Nashville is just this gold mine. But, you know, you got to treat the word impossible as motivation, don't you?
Well, I think
Chris, go. I was talking to just
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
I'll just say one thing. I think Vanderbilt has the right locale, everything, and they've got to get the right emphasis there to become relevant.
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of things to unpack here. First of all, Tim Corbin, look, their baseball program was arguably as bad as their football program before he took that job. And I know people talk about the unlimited scholarships, which I kind of laugh about because it's $85,000 a year to go there. So even if you get half tuition, that's you still owe $42,000 a year. So I think that gets overplayed some. But point is, he figured out a place where they had very little history of winning and do have some resource challenges, and he's made it into what over the last 10 years has been the best program in the country, 2 national titles, 2 runner-ups. And again, that's a lot of why Chancellor Daniel Diermeyer went to him to say, hey, help me find a football coach that can do what you did here. And so we'll see if that happens. But I go back to the money. And look, it took me a long time to get this because I covered them a long time. And it really wasn't until about 16 or 17 years in, I figured out, okay, because I would get told things. I had somebody told me, one of their bigger boosters tell me, I was on a radio show in 2013, 2014, and I'd had David Williams on. I was the host at the time. And David gave me some answers when I asked about facilities that I felt like were not answers in foot dragging. And I was, after that interview, very critical. I got a very angry call from someone who's very involved in fundraising and said, you're totally wrong about this. We're going to do it. I promise you. That was 2014. You know, nothing happened. 2019, they bring in an AD that's talking big about doing things. They run him off because internally the climate was not conducive to that. Malcolm Turner got run off because he got in a fight, among other things, with Susie Stalcuff, who was head of development. And the development people would not let people raise money for athletics. They saw it as a threat to academics. You had to go get clearance.
You are kidding, aren't you?
No, I'm not kidding. They saw it. That's why they couldn't raise any money, guys, because you would go, okay, I would like to give money to athletics. And it would be one of several things. It would be, okay, you'd like to give money to men's basketball. Well, we would like you to give a similar gift to women's basketball. They would find all these things that people didn't want to do, and people just finally threw up their hands and said, I'm done with it. They would try to give money. They would have to run it through the school. The school would say, well, if you're going to give money to football, we would like an equal donation to academics. They would find a million ways to just piss donors off, and that's why nobody gave money. And they have a problem to this day a little bit to where I have a friend that told me, he said, I bet I've given $1 million to the school. I will save the descriptions of this guy to protect his identity. Yes. I'll just say he's very bought in at a lot of levels over there, including athletics. He has paid his dues in a lot of ways. He told me, he said, I've given about $1 million to the school. He said, I'm a nobody. They've just got 30 mega donors that they can go to, hedge fund managers, pro sports team owners, you name it, that have just got all kinds of money and get checks written. They've got so much out there just scattered around that goes untapped because they have so many mega donors who can give. Now, one of the problems there is those guys, of the mega donors, you got maybe 2 or 3 that are interested in athletics. But look, they've got enough of those guys that they figured it out now, that they're in the middle of $600 to $700 million worth of spending. But it took me a long time to figure out how the whole thing worked. And the chancellor came in, figured it out too, said, this is enough, this is nonsense. And one of the first things he did was he sent the head of development packing in his first few months. So she's no longer there to kind of herd money away from athletics. And the other thing is Susan Wente, who was the chancellor, who would not, the interim chancellor, she would not take a stand at all for athletics because she was an academic. That would make her unpopular with her cronies. And so from what I understand, he told Susan Wente, look, you either find another job or you're out of here too. And she got lucky. She landed at Wake Forest as the chancellor, where people think she's pro sports. That would be a little surprise to people here. But those were two big moves he made pretty quickly that got them into the position where they are now, where they can actually raise money for things for athletics.
Yeah. And I can tell you this. Here's a comment from a listener in Birmingham. It's called Donor's Choice. Okay.
Yeah.
And you know what, these people, they talk about they're smart, they're academics. You know, the most purely bred dog I know of ever, in terms of look at his pedigree, his mother and father were this and that, is the Irish setter. But it's also the dog most often hit by a car. Okay.
Yeah.
And if your family tree looks like a crazy straw, it's that incestuous. You get these academic types that are not smart enough to understand that athletics, as Franz and Maury and different people have told me over the years, and I know this, it's your front porch to your university. If you look at Vanderbilt, and they would embrace that they are in the South. They're not in Martha's Vineyard. They're not in Haight-Ashbury out there in Berkeley, California. They're in Nashville, Tennessee, the country music capital of the world. They have a great school. They have incredible alumni who are dying to support and help that school. But I bet you 98.7% of them have never been asked to support the school. And what happens is you get a crowded group of donors at the top, and people go, well, why do I need to give? Why do I know this? Because I was asked to volunteer July 31st, 2006 on the campaign for Auburn. And I learned something. I've told Franz this, and I'll tell you this. 99% of the people that I asked for money for Auburn to get involved had never been asked. And number two, they thought, you know, the big boosters at Auburn. And they thought they did everything. And I've talked to some of them, and they've said, I said, do you get kind of tired of everybody, you know, thinking, oh, you're going to, they go, yes, let me just stop you. Yes. It's a group effort. Franz, we got to get you back on here. Let's do this again next Monday, because Chris, you're a truth broker. Okay. Does the dress make me look fat? Yeah, it does. Is Vanderbilt not asking for the order? Because I would love to be a fly on the wall in every salesman's office when they're making a call and count how many times they hang up the phone without asking for the order, without asking for the business. Franz, you know Nashville. I mean, they're Chris, thank you for saying what you said. I hadn't heard this refreshing truth. God bless you. Franz, go ahead. We're about out of time.
In the 1980s, I came back from teaching in Taiwan, and I had been ill, and I had 3 surgeries. And I'm selling cars to pay off the debt so I can go back overseas and teach again. And we had a guy named Billy Bob Langford at Shaw and Keeter Ford. And Billy Bob Langford, with 5th grade education, would sit there and say, lady, you want this damn car? I got 15 people who will buy it tomorrow. And if you ain't buying this car, just get your butt out of here, because I got to make all these phone calls. You're wasting my time. And you probably got worse credit than I got.
Yeah.
Top salesman every single month with that. And sometimes when it comes to athletics, that's what you got to do. You got to say, do you want this? Do you want to give to my school? Because if you do, we can do great things. And as when Bobby Bowden became the head coach there, and they started winning, it started at FSU. The amount of applications they had tripled the first year, quadrupled the second year. And by the time he got to the 90s, it was 10 times more applications they had than they had before.
Yeah. Yeah. Look, Chris, Franz, unbelievable stuff here today. And, you know, most often we see the face of Christ in the least among us, and there's nothing more deceptive. There's nothing more deceptive in life than an obvious clue. So Chris, GatorbaitMedia.com, Franz Beard. Chris, tell people how they can follow you. And will you come on with us again next week? I know it's been kind of like crossfire, you know, you're wrong, Martin Kondracki. We're going to have fun with this, because I think you're starting to wake up people to what Vanderbilt can be, because they have the money to do anything. But tell people how they can follow you, and we'll sign out.
Yeah, a couple things. One thing I would like to just add, to be fair, to like the country club thing has been well earned, but the sad thing, I've dealt with so many people at Vanderbilt and alums and that are so down to earth. And for every one of the wine and cheese crowd I've dealt with 10 that weren't, but your reputation is what it is. There's a lot of great people there.
Oh, there are.
And I think the top end has been allowed to ruin some of that. But yeah, I've covered Vanderbilt for 20 years. You can go to vandysports.com. It's the Vanderbilt home on the Rivals Network. We've got a podcast, the Vandy Sports Podcast. I'm about to record our first episode of season 9 shortly, so you can find that on any podcast feed. It's the largest Vanderbilt podcast. You see my background behind me. I also cover the SEC pretty heavily. We started Southeastern 14 as a way to give you 30,000-foot coverage of everybody. Like if you're an Auburn fan or a Florida fan, you will be able to find outlets to know your team better than I do. If you want to find a place that covers the whole league and knows it better than everybody else, football, baseball, and basketball, and we cover all three extensively, and you're just looking for a landing spot to know what's going on in the league, I think you'll love what we do. Our YouTube channel will go over 9,000 this week. We've only been at it for a little bit over a year, so it's gained in popularity. And so if you were looking for our Southeastern Conference coverage, go to YouTube and look up Southeastern 14.
Hey, look, great stuff. We'll be back on tomorrow. Got another great show. But you're seeing changes are happening in Nashville. And you're right. Franz and I both know it. I know tons of Andy people. They're just like we are. They want greatness. And it looks like they're trying now. And you're telling us the story. So we'll do it again next week. Till then, have a great day, everybody. We are out of here.